being here today. Ms. Bradbury, what will the Biden administration's EPA new rule on methane emissions, how will it affect independent oil and gas companies?
Ms. Lesko, thank you for your response. As I mentioned in my testimony, the United States oil and gas companies are leading the way in reducing methane emissions. And industry has stated that we could support the reasonable and workable regulation of methane. The final rule was dropped this weekend and is 1,600 pages long, and so we are still trying to get our arms around it. I will say one of the really important provisions of the rule would be, does it incentivize technology? This is an area that we're talking about today. And our initial indications is that it does fall short in that sense. And so we certainly hope that the EPA would reconsider some of the alternative technologies that would be allowed to be used for compliance to incentivize, not discourage those, to ensure that the innovation that the industry is spearheading, that we've talked about so much today, isn't stifled under this regulation.
Thank you. After you review the 1,600 pages that was dropped at, 3 a.m., yes. Could you get back to us and let us know what your thoughts are, talking points on it? I would appreciate it. Also, Ms. Bradbury, in 2019, the Department of Energy published a report that showed retrofitting a coal plant in Colorado with carbon capture utilization and storage had 37% lower CO2 emissions and was much cheaper for ratepayers than a proposed alternative combination of renewables and a gas plant without CCUS. Why? Because I assume every megawatt of renewable power produced must be backed up by firm generation such as natural gas. The same concept applies to natural gas combined cycle power plants built with CCUS technology. Biden's own Department of Energy has estimated this type of generation is much cheaper than wind and solar. Ms. Bradbury, do you believe we should be building more natural gas plants with CCUS that are more reliable than intermittent sources?
I think natural gas is the foundation of our energy grid. It is the reason that we lead the world in emissions reductions. 60% of the emissions reductions that we've achieved have been because of a switch to natural gas in the power sector, and that it also provides a foundational source of reliable power to offset the intermittent sources of renewables. So I think this is absolutely critical, especially as our grid continues to be stretched thinner and thinner as more and more demand is placed on it. I also think that we need to ensure that the regulations are on pace with the technology and don't prescribe overly prescriptive standards of CCUS that industry is not ready to meet, especially at a commercial scale.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a phone conversation with a group that actually is more liberal thinking, and they really thought CCUS was the answer, the best bang for the buck to reduce emissions. And so I thought it was good that a more liberal thinking organization actually agreed on that. Mr. Gaddy, in a LinkedIn post you stated, quote, China has made very clear that it has no intentions of divesting from fossil fuels anytime soon. Nonetheless, U.S. policymakers continue promoting the narrative that U.S. decarbonization is an act of leadership. Such naivety favors the CCP's strategy to marginalize and eventually displace America as the global superpower. Now, you have spoke about this some in your testimony, but I want to let you know that I agree with you, and can you please expand upon what you'd like to say about this?
Thank you for the, I'm glad you're following my, I guess that was a LinkedIn post, wasn't it, Congresswoman? China is in a position where, and I'm not behind the doors of the CCP, but if I were, I would probably encourage the U.S. to continue divesting from reliable domestic energy resources. If I were the competitor here, and this is just simply part of what H.R. McMaster referred to as strategically empathizing with your competitors. China would certainly want us to do that, not just to become more dependent on them for minerals and metals, but they know that that's going to put us in a very difficult position to stand up an industrial base that is very, very strong and can respond quickly. So it's again, I think we have to think about this in terms of our industrial base, not just an energy transition, but what's it going to do to our industrial base relative to China and other competitors.
John Lay's time's expired. I'll now